Let me start by asking, who likes to actually read a book? I was talking to someone in the hallway, they're like, they still make books? Like a book, like with paper in it? I got a couple, okay, I got like half the middle. The tech side is on that side for sure. There's like one thank you for the one hand, and then, okay, thank you. God, I like to read books. Michael, do you like to actually read it? I know you read books, but like a paper book. Sorry, the lights are so bright. No, see, did you hear him? He said, I know you're a smart guy and you like to be educated and stay up. And I said, you mean paper books? And he's like, you jumped right off the boat. Well, I feel like with half of you all, I feel like I'm in with my people right now because I like to read a paper book. Last night, I'm trying to go to sleep. My wife's next to me. She's on Instagram. That's how she likes to go to sleep. And I'm reading a book. And I don't know about you, like the peripheral vision. We have a queen-size bed. I won't splurge for a king-size bed. And that Instagram is just going. I have to prop a pillow up so I can't see it. I like to read an actual newspaper. And by the way, big high five to Patrick and Paul for QR. You notice the paper stock? Huh?
Yeah.
Again, some people in the room don't read it on, but some people who read, I get it. You like the paper stock. But basically, that's sort of our approach to technology at the company. We're not going to be bleeding edge, and I'll go through a little bit of history just to because I think the context is really critical with at least our approach anyway to technology. But this is sort of real world, as a home remodeler, what we do. We don't pretend to be perfect with it. And as the title suggests, it's what supports our remodeling business and our processes. Patrick mentioned it. We have processes that go way back. They're constantly getting tweaked, no doubt. But the core steps in our process, we want technology to make us better, faster, quicker, all of that, and not redo all our entire processes. To give you a little bit of context of who we are in terms of some of our numbers and our size, but I think regardless, if we shrunk 50% or if we grew 50%, I think our general approach to technology would, I think, stay the same. So it really is agnostic somewhat to size. Certainly if we were down to 2 people, it might change what we use and that kind of thing. So to the agenda that we're going to talk about for the next 40 minutes or so that we have together is a little bit of our high-level strategy with technology based on, again, things we've learned over the years. Talk a little bit about some tactics, budgeting for technology, how do we decide on a certain piece of software, that kind of thing. And then Bill Millholland, who's been with Case for 33 years. Woohoo! Bill is an amazing human being, but also an incredibly smart, a lot of you all know Bill, person that brings incredible value to the company, but it's also, for those of you who said you don't really read actual printed books, you read, but you read them online, you can feel the love with Bill. Bill, how long ago did you invest in Apple, Bill?
25.
25 years ago. So beers on Bill later, right? Are you with me? But Bill is much more in technology, always reading the latest and greatest. I'm much more sort of in the middle of the spectrum. Bill's going to talk about how we use technology more detailed through our process at different steps. And then also we're going to then end with some future thinking, just some brainstorming about how we might see some technology down the road. So the evolution, anybody use one of these growing up? Come on, John. I know you did. Did you? The old paymaster, the check to write checks? He says we had one, he never used it. So you're with me you're still using like handwritten checks, aren't you? I love you, man. But my dad got one of these when I was a kid, and this was a huge innovation back in the 60s, but it was just starting our business, trying to make it work. We've all been there, done that. It's whatever it takes to pay the bills. In the 80s, we got intrigued, I call it, with technology, with Northwest. I think it was actually Northwest construction software. There was an estimating system that was really built for, I think, new home, commercial construction. We had a fella on the team named George Weisgerber who deserves, I wish he was here and could hear this, but he's amazing. Retired, moved to Florida, doing his thing, but he really took an interest, a special passion in technology with this Northwest construction software, used it for the company, ended up converting it into our own estimating software. In the 90s, we had the Alpha Pagers. I didn't put that on here. I love those things, man. I was just constantly typing out the whole sentence on the Alpha Pager. But really, it was much more about cutting edge in the mid-late 90s. And I said context, at least for us, is important. So in the mid-late 90s, we wanted to grow. We wanted to grow aggressively. We knew we needed technology to help us keep track of that and to grow aggressively. When we looked at the tech stacks that were out there, we couldn't find things that really worked for us. And again, this is mid-late 90s. So we said, we're going to build our own, which I know I hear a lot of other remodelers talk about build their own because maybe you're not happy with what's out there. There were some great things about building our own. We built our own estimating system called CJES, Case Job Estimating System. We built our own CRM called Red House, which is sort of play off of our logo. fantastic systems built a long time ago that we used our estimating system until probably a year ago or so. So all that time we had to rebuild it on some different platforms, but amazing systems. But I will also say we learned some things the hard way, some challenges that at least encourage anyone thinking about building your own. One was the platform it's built on. They have some new and better ways to build software out nowadays, some better platforms. But our estimating system, the latest version, was built on Adobe Air, for instance. Adobe stopped supporting Adobe Air. So then you have to say, okay, do we rebuild the whole thing on another platform or what? Security in terms of ransomware and tax and things like that, keeping up with that. We were lax, candidly, in investing in that custom-built technology. My opinion is, I'm not a tech person, but my opinion is, as a business person, you ought to be ready to invest 10 to 20% of that initial software development investment per year to keep it up. Some years maybe you don't spend that, but other years you might spend twice that. A fourth or I've lost count, but somewhere in there, I'm like Biden, I've lost count, but I'll say it's fourth. I don't mean that, oh boy, I gotta be careful, right? I don't mean that plus or minus, I just am saying he does do that. But anyway, fourth or so on the list was we had it built by, some software developers, a small firm. We got bids from big firms and it was super expensive. So we used the small firm. Well, then the small firm goes out of business or people retire or things change. And just like in carpentry, they go to open the wall up and it's like, oh, it's all spaghetti in here. We got to just tear it down. And that's what we found with technology. And then the fifth thing that we found was the amount of, not just the money. I was talking to somebody this morning. The money certainly is a lot for technology, but almost the bigger thing, I think, for all of us is the time it takes for us and our team to adopt that technology, to use that technology, to see a return on investment. And so the time we were spending building our own software, we said, we want to be great remodelers. That's our passion. That's what we're great at. We're not, at least a case, great software developers. Let's let the experts do that. So those were some of the different, again, we did it mid-late 90s, but today, flashing forward to where we're at, or I'd say there's 4 keys to our strategy with technology. Number one, obvious. Does it improve us? Faster, better, smarter, those kind of things within our existing process. Number 2, how can we outsource it? We don't want to build custom software if we can at all avoid it. Sure, we need to build bridges sometimes between some different software. I'm not saying we don't build anything, but when it comes to the enterprise systems, we really don't want to build it. We really don't want to host it. We want to be cloud-based. We want it to be a proven system, a system that's been around for a while, that we have seen that's been invested in, that's going to continue to grow and thrive as opposed to something built last year in somebody's garage. And then fourth is what's safe. And safe meaning, again, from a security perspective, also it relates to the proven too, in terms we don't want to spend all this, not only money, but time and effort and have it go the way of the dodo bird in 3 years, and then all that's lost. But that safe part, I feel like when I talk to remodelers, isn't mentioned enough in terms of, again, specifically security and things like that. We got hacked, had to work through that process. We did it. Our tech team is in here, Karen, who heads our technology team. If you want more details, she's sitting over here. So just shoot it to Karen, but she's been with us, I think, 17 years, does an unbelievable job with her team and worked through that process, but I don't think anyone in here wants that. So we talked just high-level strategy. Let me jump into a couple tactics. One is budgeting, and then I'll hit on some of these others real quick. On the budgeting front, we do a line item budget for all kinds of things, but certainly technology. We have the team, we have 4 people on the tech team. Some of y'all might say I have more people than 4, but some might say I don't have anybody, I can't afford it, whatever. But one of those people who's also in the audience today, named Nick, actually started as a helper for us. And I just want to highlight that partly to give Nick a pat on the back, who's sitting over there. But secondly, to me, it's a cool story. It's somebody who worked hard in the field, helper, but had a passion to grow in the office, who had a passion for technology, frankly, who is whiz-bang smart and cares. And so we said, let's try to grow that side of him. And I think everybody in here might have somebody on the team that could fit that sort of bill, whether you have 4 people or no people in technology. Another thing is at the top, you can see what the project is, like 4 people, salaries, but then what's capitalized and what's not. So certainly, asset investments we can capitalize over the length of the term. But obviously, when we're doing cloud-based software, it's just going to be that license fee. And I skipped over consulting. We use outside consultants. Then the different applications. You can see how many applications we do use, which I'll come back to in a little bit. So if your goal was to come in here, I see Matt's laughing. If your goal was to come in here and find out, Case maybe has this one system that does everything, if you want to leave now, I'm sorry, I apologize. Bill will buy, with his Apple stock, he'll buy us a beer later, but we don't have that and haven't found that. And then you can see the phones themselves have become quite an investment in different line items, but the voice over IP has been really helpful for our business. In terms of evaluating, I just wanted to, again, hit a couple tactics. Evaluating different software, how do we at least go about that? Now, this would be for more enterprise-type systems, CRM, Estimate, those core systems. If there's sort of a small opportunity to test a design software with 1 or 2 people, we'll do that type of thing. But on core systems, we really want to start that evaluation process with the overall strategy. So I'm backing up a minute. Is it going to improve our business? Is it outsourced, right? Those things I talked about earlier. Is it proven? Is it safe? The second, then once we get through that, is let's list what we want it to do. So this was a real world example with our CRM system. We had built our own called Red House and used it for many, many years. And we said we needed to get something new. So we're going to get something off the shelf, hopefully. So we listed what we needed to do. This was a small list. Trust me, it went on from this list. And then we said, well, what platforms are out there? So we looked at different platforms that were out there. And then we combined all that into a chart. I know it's probably almost difficult, if not impossible to read, but I literally copied the chart that, again, Karen headed this and her team this up, but said, okay, here are all the softwares, here are the things we needed to do. I mean, it becomes just an big Excel spreadsheet. What can it do? And there's two, if you follow the green lines, that means it can do it. One that could do everything with Salesforce, which is the top one, and then 3 down was Microsoft Dynamics. And this isn't just literally her going down reading the website and saying, can Salesforce do this? Yes, yes, yes. This is digging into, okay, we need to do estimating or whatever. Estimating is a bad example, but we needed to do scheduling, for instance. That's how we schedule our in-house carpenters and things like that. Let's really dig into that, not just say, oh, it has scheduling, but how does it work? How easy is it? Because we're going to have a lot of different users. So again, there were Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics that checked all the boxes, and we ended up going with Microsoft Dynamics. Not the cheapest. We really wanted something cheaper, like Sugar CRM. Karen and I talked a lot about some other things like that were a little easier, they were cheaper, but we just felt at the end of the day, we wanted to go with more robust opportunities. So I mentioned, and then in the implementation side, so once we pick a software, then we got to implement it. Again, sharing some real world sort of behind the curtain, making the sausage, right, kind of side of things. Once we implement it, 5 lessons learned that at least I thought I'd share that we've been through a case with implementing, again, enterprise-wide software, not just, oh, it's a little piece of software we're going to test on the side a little bit. Number 1 is the hard work starts now. So we had a fellow named Herb Stanwood, who also is an amazing person, who worked with us for many years. He was in sales, and he always had this saying, the hard work starts after the sale is made. A lot of salespeople don't see it that way. They think the sale's made and woohoo, it's done. There's a little bit of extra work, unfortunately. So the hard work starts now with implementation. To me, it's the same with software. You hit the power button, so to speak, on this new software. You've worked hard to pick it, and then everybody just stares at you like, yeah, good luck with that, right? So the implementation side, I think we underestimated that for many years. We probably still do sometimes, but that is where the hard work starts. Operations is the lead with implementation for us, not to tech team. For years, it would be, again, I mentioned Karen, who heads up our technology side. It was like, Karen, oh, you're going to lead the charge to get our new CRM system used by everybody and all that. And Karen, to her credit, was patient, but also after a while, very vocal about this. We need operations, meaning the front end of the business, to really lead it, and IT becomes almost the support side. Certainly, IT is very involved, but the operations side has to lead it. Takes a couple years to get that return on investment, at least for a business like ours. We implement this new software, a new CRM, a new estimating system. It is a pain in the tuchus for the first year. It's just all expense going out the door to buy it, develop it, again, even if it's on licenses. The second year, we've got some people using it, some people not, but really to see that return on investment for us takes a couple years. Another thing we found is, I call it eat the elephant one bite at a time. I'll touch in a second on our tech stack, but we use different pieces of different software, partly because it's best in class for us, but secondly, because if we said, oh, here's this whole new system, and we're going to do everything through that system, our team would choke, and I think our business would choke as well. So we try to eat it one bite at a time. Let's start using this and make it a sort of a simple adoption. And then, we can use it for this and use this. And Builder Trend is something we've been doing that with. And then rule of thirds. I asked at the start who reads a paperback book versus who doesn't, that kind of thing. At least in our organization, it's a third, a third, a third. A third of the people are early adopters. Woohoo, this new thing, I'm going to dive in, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go. A third are just like, yeah, hell no, I'm not even touching that thing. I'm the only one in here? Is anybody with me? And then a third are in the middle. You know, I'll use it for this or that. And it's just, we find that, frankly, we use that saying for everything. If we passed out dollar bills, it'd be a third of the people would say, oh, that's awesome. A third of the people would say, how come it's not $5? And then a third would be kind of in the middle. But anyway, we find that with technology adoption, just real world. I don't know if that makes you feel better because you might be dealing with that, or if we don't have an easy answer other than we're ready for it to happen. And then the last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bill to do his talk more about how it follows through our process, more detailed, the technology. But generally our tech stack at an enterprise level, this isn't all the technology we use, but you can see we use Microsoft Dynamics for CRM. ProEst is our estimating system. That's what we picked up about a year ago as we moved on from our proprietary in-house built one. We use Buildertrend for project management and owner portals, Microsoft 365 for Word and Excel, and then Ignite for data storage. Now you might say, geez, Buildertrend can keep data, or so can Microsoft Dynamics. But the way we do business, it goes back to Patrick's introduction, the way we do business, we found the best, for instance, data storage is Ignite for us, because it has a much more involved data storage capabilities than, and again, I'm not shooting at Buildertrend or anybody else, that's not my point. It's just I'm trying to emphasize, we say what's gonna work for our business the best. Yes, it means we have to enter the name and address a couple times. That sucks and I hate it, but I'd rather do that than have our entire team be slowed down because of entering the name and address once. Someday, in a couple of years, I'd love to stand up and say we've got this one system, but I also, and we'll touch on this later, maybe AI will do some of those things to help be that glue, potentially, maybe, between some of the systems. So with that, let me turn it over to Bill.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use different technologies through our process. And as Bruce said, we're big believers in technology follows the business doesn't follow the technology. So we may do some things that maybe don't seem as efficient as they could be, but that's because of that reason, that we do things a certain way. It's been proven to work. We get repeatable and predictable results if we do it that way, and we're not going to let software determine how we run the business. So all of this starts with creating opportunities. We use a bunch of different technologies to do that. Shana, where's Shana? Shana's going to be giving a breakout session, did one this morning, going to do another one. If you're interested in knowing a little more about how we use that in marketing, please attend that. Maddie, my daughter, was going to do one on social. I'm plugging in for her, so if you want to listen to an old man talk about a new technology, you can join me for that. But anyway, so more details in those breakout sessions. And then as Bruce said, the process, the CRM dynamics is where everything begins. So somebody calls in, they express an interest, we get a lead through the web, whatever it might be, that data gets included into CRM and we start tracking it. At the beginning, we only know a little bit. As we go through the process, we learn a lot more. So dynamics is where it starts. That gets assigned to a project developer. A project developer in our world is a salesperson. That salesperson often has an architectural or an interiors background to them. Oftentimes they came from being a designer. Not all the time, but most of the time. And we're a pretty big company and we're pretty good with technology, but we don't use much tech in the home. We've experimented with a bunch of different tools, some linear, some non-linear on an iPad. And what we've really found is we're best when that salesperson, when that project developer is heads up, reading body language, paying attention to that client, and answering, what can I do, how much is it going to cost, and how long is it going to take? And specifically tailoring that presentation to that individual client. We have the luxury of that. We've been around forever. We do a lot of advertising. We drive a lot of people to the website, so people know who we are and how we do things before we show up. So that may not be a luxury that everybody has. But in home, again, how much does it cost, how long is it going to take, and what's possible? The project developer is going to work on the what's possible. We can do this, what about that? Did you consider whatever those things might be? But then we're going to use a timeline, and we're going to update this because timelines kept growing and growing and growing through COVID. But it's an example of, instead of having a Word document We use Publisher instead and try and make it a little more graphic because we're a design shop and we shouldn't look like accountants. And then we also have this amazing tool that we call WAG Tools, Wild Ass Guess. It's a little more informed than that, but it is a component within our sort of estimating ecosystem. And that all starts off with, as Bruce said, ProEst. We've recently switched platforms. The data is still the same. And if you want to know more about that, Mr. David Exton back there is giving a breakout session in the next one, I believe it is, who's going to talk a little bit about what that implementation, that journey was like. And we're still dragging some of those people in that direction. But what we found is, again, as soon as we get a new estimating system, we build it internally to adapt to our processes. So Dave's built a bunch of assemblies in there, and then we can do things like he's got a one-story addition on a crawl space foundation, and we can say, how much does that cost for 400 square feet, 700 square feet, 900 square feet, or 1,200 square feet? So then if you plot that, it's a curve, right? The more you build, the less it costs. If you can figure out what the equation is for that curve, now you know how much 857 square feet cost. And that's what we've done in WAG Tools. So we can do this in home if we want to, or oftentimes this is done in preparation for going to visit that client because we've spent some time on the phone with them. And then we also use, so estimating very precise, WAG Tools pretty darn precise, but a range. And then we use these sheets in home that are budgeting. And they're really helpful because before we had a sheet, we'd say, well, we think it's going to cost about this and that and the other thing. And it just doesn't have the credibility that if you come in with something that's pre-printed, because now you don't care about what kind of watch they have or the shoes or the car in the driveway. It's just, this is what it costs, you know, sort of thing. So it lends some credibility to that. And then we've got these sheets for a bunch of different project types: kitchens, bathrooms, primary bathrooms, big primary baths, small primary baths, basements, porches, decks, additions, whatever it might be, to help walk a client through what some of the components might be for the cost of their project. Anybody notice how this is like the bride's side, who has a much bigger audience than the groom's side? I don't know why that is. Wow, different. But anyway, so we want to walk a client through what those components might be, and then maybe suggest a couple different scenarios. If you're trying to be in a specific budget range, here's how we're going to get there. And then, you know, it starts a conversation, which is what we're basically trying to do around budgeting. So lead is captured, it's in CRM, it's assigned to a project developer. The project developer's met with that client, has gone through what can we do, how much is it going to cost, and how long is it going to take. If that client decides to proceed, now they're in our process. And our process is basically 3 steps. Step 1 is what we call case study. Preliminary design work happens there. Step 2, details. You know, the blueprints for the drawing. All the selections and all of the detailing of the project happens in that step. Finally, at the end of that step, we know what everything is. We can put a dollar amount on it. Client signs a contract. Off we go to build it. 3 steps. So, step 1, the design phase of things. Is anybody experimenting with some of the gee-whiz technologies around measuring right now? That we're, AJ, I saw him earlier, has this cool new software called Render that you can go around the room and it creates the model for you as you do it. There's some competitors in that space. We're big users of Hover for exteriors, where we can build a SketchUp model just by taking a series of, I think it is 9 photographs, those sorts of things. But again, we take a pretty pragmatic approach to technology in that creative people do creative things, and we want to allow them to do creative things within a guardrail system. You know, so we develop a framework, and how you get from point A, provided you stay within that framework, is your business. So we still have people that would rather pull a tape or shoot a laser and draw by hand. Most of that drawing by hand is now on an iPad instead of a piece of paper, but it's still drawing by hand. So again, back to the sort of pragmatic side. I don't know about you guys, but in the middle of COVID, we had these extraordinarily long lead times. You were waiting and waiting and waiting to get our attention, which is miserable from a client's perspective. So we're trying to find ways where we can get out there quicker, right? Well, one of the ways we found that was You probably have Redfin or Zillow in your market, right, for selling homes. Well, if you look through some of the listings, there's floor plans associated with that listing. So we went through Redfin, we looked at who was doing that work. Some of them are marked with that business, the better ones. We looked up who that was, contacted them, and they'll go out and measure an entire house for us for like $400. And $400, a lot of money, but when you can't get to it, it's a really nice way to get back in front of that client and at least get engaged again. So we usually, project developer goes out, meets the guy that comes out to measure it, they put everything together, and initially the concern was, well, it's probably not very accurate, right? It's a real estate floor plan. It's not an architectural floor plan. In hindsight, there's magic to that because we know it's wrong. We just don't know where it's wrong, but it's good enough for preliminary work. So we can do preliminary work on it, but we can't do detailed work on it. So it forces us to go back and double check dimensions. And that's a really good habit to have. So it's really come in handy in terms of shortening lead times. Our preliminary stuff looks something like this. We use a program called Vectorworks for all of our CAD work. And then again, old school, still a little bit of hand sketching if that's what it's gonna take. I like hand sketching. I think it looks like art. I appreciate that only comes from that hand and that pencil. Some clients don't care. But so in addition to 2D work, which we use in Vectorworks, we're also, of course, doing 3D work. We use SketchUp and a plugin called Podium. Yeah, I know there's probably a bunch of chief architect users in the audience. We've looked hard at Chief a bunch of times, and it just doesn't work very well for us. Some of the issues we have are, one, it's an issue to drag people that are comfortable in one environment to another at a production sort of pace. Secondly, it didn't exist very well in our network. It seems to be happiest when you're running stuff locally off that machine. And then third, at least at the time, we weren't very happy with the construction documents. We could not get the level of control out of it that we could get out of Vectorworks. So again, the business controls the technology employed. But anybody ever heard of India? They have people over there that'll model stuff for you. So again, in the go-go times where we're over our heads busy, we can send something to an outsourced option, and in about 2 or 3 days, they turn around renderings for us. These cost anywhere from $300 to $700, depending on how big the space is, how many scenes you want, but it's quick. It looks pretty good, but they are a drafting service. You have to specify everything. You tell them the cabinets, the tops, the appliances, all those sorts of things. It's best if it's used later in the process because then you've got layouts for cabinetry, all the rest. But again, from a pragmatics point of view, we're looking for the shortest distance between those 2 points, and if we can outsource that, that's something we're playing around with a little more. Again, while those preliminary things are going together, all this is through the magic of Mr. Exton being estimated in ProEst. Dave does, at least on the case side, all the estimating for us. So that is hundreds and hundreds of estimates per year. He's a machine, he gets through it. It's dead on accurate. If you sit on his talks, he'll tell you how accurate, because you should be pretty proud of that. So anyway, as we're developing these concepts, we usually develop 3. We're also budgeting them. Not exact. But again, pragmatic approach to technology. This is what documents used to look like they came out of Word. This is what documents look like they come out of Publisher. You can quibble about the graphics of it, but it looks like a design firm put that document together rather than an accounting firm. And if you're a design build firm, hopefully you care about these things, because it goes back to branding too, right? That we want to make sure what we're putting in front of clients represent who we are and our sensibilities as a business. But pretty low-tech tools. Phase 2, now we're jumping into the details of the project. Technology, it's a wonderful thing, but don't lose track of the human side of things. We use, Pinterest, Houzz, a bunch of different images to help curate a direction maybe, but there is nothing more powerful than designers pulling materials out, client walking in, seeing all this stuff on an island and saying, oh my God, this is for me. And what ends up happening typically is they find one they're drawn to, they love everything about it except for this, and then all those decisions are made except for that one thing. So it has radically improved our selections process with using humans and technology to sort of curate down to a limited group of options, but nothing better than putting people in front of people. And then of course we grind through drawings that, again, Vectorworks is our CAD platform of choice, and one of the things that we're trying to pay a whole lot more attention to when it comes to drawings is the audience. So as drawings move through a process, their audience changes, at least for us. So early on and up to a contract stage, the audience is the client. We want to make sure our drawings represent what that client is buying, not necessarily how to build it, because if they don't buy it, how you build it really doesn't matter. We're doing all this stuff behind the scenes, so we're estimating it correctly. We've got engineering information, all that, but we don't want to complicate the drawings like that because the client is our audience at this phase. So the next audience is the permit reviewer, right? So now we want to tailor those drawings to include that information on how we're going to build it, but they don't need to know all that stuff about what the client is buying. So we can strip out a lot of the detailed kitchen, bath, selection. They don't care about that sort of stuff. And we want to make the drawings as simple as possible. So they go, yep, and grant us that permit. So we're thinking about the audience at that stage. So then finally it hits the poor guy in the field, the case craftsman. And now we've got to weave all that stuff back together. What the client's expecting in terms of what they bought, what we promised the permit reviewer, how we're going to build it. That's a different set of drawings. And then something else that's really on our minds is the trade alliances, subcontractors, in that they're not part of the team and do drawings as we rely more and more and more on subcontracting. Drawings need to evolve because we have a different level of relationship with a subcontractor than we do with a case craftsman. So we have to be cognizant of that sort of stuff and be thinking through, what does that electrician, what does that plumber need in order to do their job? And this is an example, maybe, of that sort of thinking, in that these used to be drawings full of schedules. It was made by Kohler, it's a K34 whatever, and it's chrome, and it's this, and it's that. Now we're using images as much as we can. In addition to that information, so the poor guy in the field that opens the box, he knows what that thing's supposed to look like. And we're gonna get better results from that. That client also understands what that is at a different level than just a schedule of materials. That if we can include graphics in this, it makes everybody's life easier. So that's an example of trying to really focus on who our audience is and making this as easy to understand as possible. I'm a little bit of a drawing fanatic. I appreciate a beautiful drawing, whether that's 2D, 3D, or something in between. And one of the things we're really working hard on is to make drawings as easy to understand as possible. Because we have this tendency for information density to pack as much crap on a page as we can. And for the poor guy in the field, trying to parse through all of that, it takes time, it slows him down, it's intimidating, all of that sort of stuff. So we want to be thinking about where's the best place to put that information? How dense should that be? Can we use images instead of words? And images instead of words, at least for us, is really important because a lot of guys on our team now, English is a second language. They're brilliant. They're really high quality craftsmen, but they grew up somewhere else. And the English they speak, they have to be able to speak it, but some of them don't read it as well as somebody that grew up here. And so anything we can do to give that, it's like looking at bullet points, 9 on a page, or looking at 4 paragraphs on a page. 4 paragraphs on a page is intimidating and dense. If we can reduce this down to bullet points and maybe some graphics associated with it, we're gonna get a better result. The guy's gonna appreciate that, and everything is better as a result. We also use a bunch of other technology in our process. Our hardware environment looks something like this. Everybody's got a laptop at their desk. They have 2 monitors. Our IT team does an amazing job of keeping everybody up all the time, whether they're in the office remote or somewhere in between. The KIP, which is bottom right-hand corner, is our workhorse plotter. It is a laser plotter. It's fast, so we can plot 20 sheets pretty quickly. It's black and white, it is not color. If we need color, we have inkjet plotters around to plot in color. Then we have BizHubs around, which we can print to 11 by 17 on. They're again color lasers, so we can use color, because color can be really helpful in understanding a set of drawings. And then, every designer, every developer typically has a laptop, 2 monitors, and the laptops specifically for designers are fairly powerful, big graphics, lots of memory, those kinds of things to run those applications. As Bruce mentioned, we rely on Ignite for all of our cloud storage, that you can get to it from anywhere on the planet. I don't know of any time it's ever gone down or we've had issues with it. So it works really well for us. We're big users of DocuSign for remote signatures. I would bet 80% of our contracts are now signed via DocuSign, where there may be preliminary meetings beforehand going through everything, updating a couple details, send it off via DocuSign, it comes back. So a lot of contracts, subcontracts, agreements, whatever, done that way. On the build side of things, we use Buildertrend. Do we use all of Buildertrend? Nope. We use it primarily for scheduling, the forecast of a project. Forecast changes like the weather. So forecasting as the project moves through, a lot of photography is kept on there. Some documents are kept on there, contracts, addendums, those sorts of things. It's really handy. It's also great for social media. Maddie trolls Buildertrend all the time. Project managers are really pretty good about snapping, progress photos of projects, and some people out there find that interesting. I do. And then the other thing is we use software for time cards. It used to be project managers had to drive from job site to job site collecting time cards. And again, that goes back to job costing, because we want to make sure we know where that guy's working and what he's working on, because that's going to inform estimating. So Dave does an amazing job of keeping up with all of that and making little tweaks and adjustments along the way. If we find interior trim, the labor for that is taking a little longer than we have been estimating, he'll bump that up. Or we just lowered lumber costs by 15%, because Dave watches trending on lumber and keeps us up to date on all of that sort of stuff. On the sales management side, a lot of that is at the beginning of the year, we develop projections. Then we break that down into regions, because we have a bunch of different offices. Then we also break that down into people, so they know what the expectation is per month. And then also with that, we're able to develop lead projections, right? Because we can take how much are we supposed to sell, divide it by the average job size. That determines how many projects we have to sell. You divide that by a close rate, and that shows you how many leads you need. And so, again, on average, but it's a great predictor of the future, because now if you're above that, in a couple months from now, you ought to see strong sales. If you're below that, you better be scrambling and get people on phones or following up or whatever it is to create more opportunities. We shape these projections through the year. May is busier than January, so we try and be realistic about that. And we meet 3 times a month with the entire project development and designer team. So we go through all of this in excruciating detail. We pay a lot of attention to pipeline in CRM. Like, when did that agreement sign? When are we expecting the next step to happen? Who's got what going on? Is there somebody that's overrun with work and we need to help them a little bit? Or is there a project developer that's got so many projects on their plate that we need to keep leads away from because they're going to be a nuisance? All of that sort of stuff happens in there. And then I'm a big write rather than type fan, so I use GoodNotes on an iPad as I meet with people individually. I meet with designers every week. We go through every project on their list, both in design and in production. So tools we use, just a quick recap of Dynamics CRM, SketchUp and Vectorworks to draw. Ignite is where all the files exist. We're Sage Timberline shop for accounting. It's a pretty sophisticated accounting system. And then we use Microsoft Teams for remote meetings, those sorts of things. So I was hoping I could get Bruce to come back up here and tell us what's going to happen in the future.
Damn, Bill, is he good or what? I mean, come on, huh? Get yourself a sip of water. Holy crap. So we only have 1 minute and 9 seconds, probably 1 minute and 8 now. minute and 7. But we just thought we'd hit just 1 or 2 quick thoughts on, again, as non-IT people, what we see as maybe in the future. We have a panel right after this that I think Patrick will talk about that will be on. But I'll just go first to give you a quick breath. AI is it's here, it's coming, it's going to transform us, technology and all that. But I think we're in the people business. I think we all know that. I think we all would, I assume, agree with that. And that people stuff, I don't personally think can be put on a computer. And whether the people stuff is homeowners, like Bill mentioned, in terms of that tactile touch with selections or other things, or in the home sales. We've tried a lot of technology, but that people connection, but also the people with the carpenters in the field. I mean, at the end of the day, I say carpenters, tradespeople in the field, craftspeople. I mean, I don't see how that's going to get offshored. Somebody earlier mentioned 3D printing, maybe for new homes. I think that's a long way off for home remodeling. I'm not saying never, but at least as long as I'm alive in this business, I personally don't think it'll be here. We've done some things with modular and other things that probably some of you all do, but that again only has certain applications. So I think if we just keep that people-sided focus and use technology as a tool, big picture, I know that's not a aha, wow moment, but I am a book reader. What do you think, Bill?
I'd agree about the AI, but I think people-driven, absolutely. I'm really excited not about general intelligence, but very specific intelligence. I want to be able to ask an AI how many outlets are required on an island that is 12 feet long by 3 feet wide according to the IRC 2021 and get an answer. That's what I want, very deep intelligence in a very narrow way. The other thing I'm kind of excited about is AR, VR. AR specifically, because I think we can do amazing things up front in design and sales, and then we're not doing much for technology in the field, that those poor guys are out there still doing things in a lot of ways, the same way we've done them for a long time. So, the idea of somebody puts on some safety goggles and they're installing something and there's a little user manual or instructions guide on how to put the stuff up in your peripheral vision so you're not paging through something, I think could be really kind of cool. And then I'm dipping my toe into home automation, and I'm really excited about something called Matter, where anybody that's got some home automation, there's a bunch of competing standards, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Google, Amazon, all the rest. And sometimes you don't know, you make your first purchase and you're stuck now in this channel. Well, Matter's promise is to be almost like email, that any client can access it and it just works. So if you've headed down the Zigbee, Z-Wave and you want to introduce some Amazon stuff into your house, hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Are you saying code books might go away? I'm still stuck on that. I love the code books.
Yeah, God, I'm
oh man, jeez. All right, we're out of time. Thank you. And again, there's going to be a panel. Patrick, I'll let you. Thank you.